Welcome to my channel. I've recently started collecting American Girl dolls again after an 8-year hiatus. Now that I'm an adult, I'm much more interested in the history and controversies of the company that I overlooked as a child. Disclaimer, this video is going to be extremely long, so I have left timestamps down below in the description if you'd like to jump around. With that said, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's take a nostalgic trip back in time and deep dive into the history of American Girl. This deep dive begins with the founder of American Girl, Pleasant Rowland. She was born on March 8th, 1941 in Chicago. From 1962 to 1968, Pleasant Rowland worked as a school teacher in various states around America. From 1968 to 1971, Pleasant Rowland had become a news reporter and an anchor for the ABC station KGO-TV. She left the spotlight in the 1970s to pursue her textbook writing career. She wrote and published several children's textbooks. She was also known as the publisher of the Children's Magazine Guide. During this time period, she also started a language program called Beginning to Read, Write, and Listen, which was aimed at kindergartners and first graders. Then, in 1978, she created another literacy program called Super Kids, which was another reading education program aimed at a higher age range than her previous program. Pleasant Rowland had taken a trip to Colonial Williamsburg with her husband in 1984. During this trip, she was inspired to make learning about history more appealing to young girls. While Pleasant had been shopping for her two young nieces later on, she realized there was an immense age gap between the dolls targeted towards young girls. The options included baby dolls, which the girls would need to care for, and on the other side of the spectrum was Barbie dolls, which were adult, where the girls were able to act out an array of jobs and activities adults would do. She noticed there were no dolls aged the same age as the girls playing with them, that they could grow up with, and who were dealing with the same issues as them. Pleasant had intertwined both of these ideas, thus creating Pleasant Company. If you're confused by the company name, Pleasant Company was the name of the company prior to being bought out by Mattel, and infamously renamed American Girl. American Girl is an American line of 18-inch dolls released on May 5th, 1986 by Pleasant Company. The dolls were modeled after Gott's dolls, which were manufactured by a German toy company. The dolls' limbs and heads are made out of vinyl and have rotational molding that allows for the dolls' limbs to be moved. The dolls' bodies are made of cotton cloth and then filled with polyester fiber fill. Unlike baby dolls with molded plastic hair or Barbies with rooted hair, the American Girl dolls came with a wig made of high-quality mod acrylic fiber hair. Furthermore, the dolls came with eyes known as sleep eyes, which means that when the doll is laid down, her eyes will close as if she's asleep. The eyes are inset to allow this function, opposed to other dolls with painted eyes. The remainder of the facial features on the dolls were painted on. The company began with 3 historical dolls. Each doll included a book with a story about their life during their time period, accessories and fashion which were period accurate. When released, the dolls cost $68 with a paperback book and $75 with a hardcover book, making them luxury dolls even at the time of their release. At the time, the dolls were only available through mail order via the Pleasant Company catalog. Let me introduce you to the 3 main dolls. First up, we have Kristen Larson. She represents the pioneer era in 1854. Kirsten is a Swedish immigrant who moves to Minnesota. Her story covers what it is like immigrating to America and the struggles her and her family face. Next up, we have Samantha Parkington. She represents the progressive / turn-of-the-century era in 1904. Samantha is an orphan who lives with her rich grandma in New York. Her story focuses on classism and child labor, which is shown through Samantha and an orphan servant Nellie O'Malley who she befriends. Lastly, we have Molly McIntyre. She represents the late World War II era. She is a Scottish American living in Illinois. Molly doesn't seem to care about the effects of war until introduced to Emily Bennett, a British girl displaced by the war. In 1990, American Girl came out with a new doll line called Our New Baby. The dolls were marketed as a way for young children to get used to newborn siblings. The dolls came gender neutral, and there were 3 different race options: Caucasian, African American, and Asian American. The baby dolls cost $54 and cost $68 if you wanted to include a book. The dolls themselves were 15 inches, and much like the American Girl dolls, the babies came with clothing and accessories that could be purchased separately. The following year, in 1991, American Girl released a new historical doll named Felicity Merriman. Felicity represents the English colonial America in 1774. She lives in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is the place Pleasant Rowland was inspired to create the dolls. Felicity is a horse girl at heart. She also has a best friend named Elizabeth Cole, a loyalist from England, while Felicity is a patriot, which causes issues to arise between their friendship. Felicity was also the first doll not to have a white cloth body, as her period clothing did show a portion of her chest at the top, so they changed to bodies that were the same shade as the doll's skin tone. In 1992, American Girl started doing fashion shows. These fashion shows were hosted by non-profit organizations. The shows included meals, books to purchase, photo studio for girls and dolls, a hair salon, a mini store, and raffles. The show both had historical and modern outfits, and each young girl modeling had a matching doll with her. The following year, in 1993, another historical doll was added named Addie Walker. She represents the Civil War era in 1864. Addie is an African-American girl who was enslaved on a plantation in North Carolina. Within her story, her and her mother eventually escaped to Philadelphia. Addie was the first ever Black American Girl doll. She introduced a new face mold called the Addie mold, while the previous four had the classic mold. Her story had caused a bit of commotion with the American Girl doll community and the media. Some were glad they finally had Black representation within the company, while some were upset that the doll didn't positively represent the Black community. There was even a petition for American Girl to stop selling Addie, the 9-year-old runaway slave doll made in 2020, showcasing how people thought they romanticized a painful part of Black history. A couple years later, American Girl launched a new line of dolls called American Girl of Today. This line showcased modern dolls and clothing. These dolls are not customizable, but come in various skin tones, eye colors, face molds, and hair colors. Over the years, they've released 117 dolls in this line. The dolls are nameless and have unassigned races or ethnicities, which means those are all up to the purchaser. Dolls in this line are referred to by numbers. The same year, American Girl rebranded Our New Baby to Bitty Baby. These dolls' autonomy differs from the 18-inch dolls. The arms and legs are made from the same material as the cloth body, while the hands and feet are made out of vinyl. The hair is molded and painted. The dolls also have sleep eyes, like the 18-inch dolls, and Bitty Babies were now marketed as baby girls instead of gender neutral. They released another historical doll in 1997 named Josefina Montoya. She represents New Mexico under the Mexican rule. Josefina hopes to be a healer. She was the first Latinx doll. For her story, they researched museums, libraries, and historical sites in Mexico and the US for 3 years. Then, in 1998, the first ever American Girl Place store was opened in Chicago, Illinois. This allowed shoppers to shop in-store for dolls. Along with this, the store also had a restaurant and a 150-seat theater. Also, during this year, Pleasant Company was bought by Mattel. Now under Mattel, the company was renamed American Girl in 2000. The same year, they released the 7th historical doll, Kit Kittredge. She represents the Great Depression era in 1934. Fun fact, her real name is Margaret, but she goes by her nickname Kit. She's a tomboy. Her story shows the hardships her family faces during the Great Depression and showcases the other hand where her best friend Ruthie Smithens is unaffected. In 2001, American Girl released a new doll line called Girl of the Year. These dolls would only be available for the year they were released. The first doll released in this line was Lindsay Bergman for 2001. She was the first Jewish doll. She also had a very small collection. The doll was a very poor seller, which ended up with American Girl not making a Girl of the Year for 2002. Due to her poor sales, she's a very hard doll to find on the secondhand market. In 2002, American Girl released another historical doll, Kaya. I couldn't find any videos of anyone pronouncing her last name properly, and I don't want to butcher it, but it'll be up on the screen. She represents early Native America in 1764. Kaya is the first ever indigenous doll. The doll took 5 to 6 years to develop. She's a part of the Nez Perce tribe. There was a board of members from the Nez Perce tribe that helped to create Kaya. They helped to create her brand new face mold. She was the first doll to not show their teeth, as in the Nez Perce tribe, showing teeth is a sign of aggression. The following year, in 2003, they released another Girl of the Year, Kaylee Hopkins. She lives in California and is a surfer. Throughout her story, she becomes an environmental activist. The same year, another doll line was released called Bitty Twins. These dolls were marketed as boy-girl twins. Later, there became multiple combination of the dolls. The dolls came with wigged hair and were marketed as 3-year-olds. The dolls pretty much have the same body structure in the clothing clothing can be used for both Biddy twins and Biddy babies. The line started with the blonde twins, then the brunette twins, and then in 2008, African, Asian, and Latino twins were introduced. The doll line was discontinued in 2016. Also in 2003, they made the Hopscotch Hill School. This line was geared towards elementary-aged kids. There were 4 dolls that were students in the same class. The doll line included Logan, Skylar, Haley, and Gwen. These dolls were 16 inches, made of vinyl and plastic with ball-jointed knees and elbows, painted static eyes, and wigged hair. The dolls cost $48, and the doll line only lasted 3 years, retiring in 2006. In 2004, a Nellie O'Malley doll and Elizabeth Cole doll were created. This started a best friend doll line where characters from historical doll stories were turned into dolls. In the same year, American Girl made their first movie called Samantha, an American Girl holiday. American Girl released their 3rd Girl of the Year in 2005, Marisol Luna. She lives in Chicago, Illinois, and is a dancer. She was the first Girl of the Year to have a starter collection, but there was some controversy with Marisol as the book mentioned her previous neighborhood being dangerous. Residents in the real-life neighborhood felt it negatively portrayed the neighborhood. In 2006, they released Jess McConnell. She's half Japanese and half Irish and Scottish. Her story takes place in Belize, and she became the first traveling Girl of the Year. The same year, they released Molly's best friend, Emily Bennett. She was the first doll to not be an American, as she was from Britain. The Girl of the Year for 2007 was Nikki Fleming. She's from Denver, Colorado. She lives on a ranch and is also a horse girl. Nikki was the first Girl of the Year to actually be released on January 1st. Along with Nikki, American Girl released Julie Albright and her best friend Ivy Ling. They both represent the 1974s. They live in San Francisco. Julie is dealing with her parents' divorce and plays basketball, and because of this she is labeled as a tomboy, as sports are only for boys. Her best friend Ivy struggles with her Chinese heritage but eventually learns to value it. The new year brought Girl of the Year 2008 Mia Sinclair. She lives in upstate New York and is a figure skater, and her brothers often teased her for this as they play hockey. Also this year they released Ruthie Smithens, Kit's best friend. 2009 brought Girl of the Year Krissa Maxwell. Krissa moves from Iowa to Minnesota. Her story deals with bullying. She was a special Girl of the Year as she was the first release with her best friend dolls to accompany her. One of those dolls was Sonali Matthews. She was the first doll with an Indian heritage. She was one of the bullies but realized it's wrong and befriends Krissa. Sonali is one of the rarest dolls to find on the secondhand market. The other best friend doll was Gwen Thompson. She's also bullied and befriends Krissa. Later in her story, she becomes homeless. This became controversial as the doll was homeless, but the dolls cost $100. Which left people questioning the choice as it showed classism. In response to this, American Girl donated $500,000 to Home Aid. Also this year, they released another historical doll, Rebecca Rubin. She represents the early 20th century in 1914. She is a Russian Jewish immigrant living in the Lower East Side of New York City. She wants to become an actress, and she deals with fitting in with American culture, especially in regards to Christmas. Lainey Holland was released as Girl of the Year 2010. She lives in Massachusetts and likes science and nature. The following year, 2011, brought Girl of the Year. She was the first doll from Hawaii, Kanani Akina. She's very interested in protecting wildlife. She was also a very popular doll. The same year also brought 2 new historical dolls, Marie Grace Gardner and Cecile Ray. They represent New Orleans in 1853. They both enjoy singing and parades. Cecile helps Mary Grace come out of her shell and become more confident. Girl of the Year for 2012 is McKenna Brooks. She's a gymnast from Seattle, Washington. She has trouble with reading comprehension. A new historical doll, Caroline Abbott, was added in 2012. She represents the War of 1812 in New York. She enjoys sailing on Lake Ontario. She dreams of being the captain of her own ship one day. Caroline was only available for 3 years, retiring in 2015. The doll's release also caused some controversy, as American Girl wanted to trademark the name Caroline, but it was very similar to a trademark by an artist, Caroline Yardley. 2013 brought the new Girl of the Year, Sage Copeland. She's from Albuquerque, New Mexico. She loves art and horses. Sage was the first Girl of the Year to come with pierced ears and have a mini doll. The following year brought another Girl of the Year, 2014, Isabel Palmer. She lives in Washington, D.C. and is a ballet dancer. The same year, American Girl also probably launched one of the worst rebrands in the history of the company. They launched the Be Forever rebrand of the historical dolls to make them more appealing to younger generations. They removed all of the best friend dolls as they wanted wanted the young girls playing with them to be their best friends. This upset many collectors as they came to love the best friend dolls. Another issue was that Ivy Ling was the only character of Asian heritage that wasn't retired in the historical line. The other issue was that they came out with new meat outfits for the dolls that many thought were ugly and didn't represent their historical eras. American Girl reverted back to the main historical line back in 2019. Also in 2014, American Girl opened stores in Canada, one location being in Toronto and the other being in Vancouver. In 2015, American Girl released Grace Thomas, Girl of the Year for 2015. She's from Massachusetts, but her story takes place in Paris. She loves to bake, and her friends create a business. Along with the 2015 Girl of the Year, American Girl released Mary Ellen Larkin. She represents 1954 and was a historical doll. Mary Ellen had polio, which caused one of her legs to be weaker. The Girl of the Year for 2016 was Leah Clark. She's from St. Louis, Missouri, and travels to Brazil. Leah loves photography and wildlife. In 2016, Melody Ellison was also introduced to the historical line. She represents 1964 and loves to sing and garden. The same year, American Girl started doing AG Reward. This was a purchase rewards program. Along with this, also in 2016, they released Welly Wishers. These dolls stood at 14.5 inches and are all vinyl. The line was to replace the Biddy twins. The doll line name came from the Wellington boots the dolls wore. The line started with 5 dolls: Willa, Emerson, Kendall, Camille, and Ashlyn, later adding a boy doll, Bryant, in 2022. The dolls all play together in Willa's grandma's backyard, and these dolls are often used to be younger siblings to the 18-inch American Girl dolls. 2017 was filled with many controversies, so let's introduce the new dolls and then we'll dive into the drama. The Girl of the Year for 2017 was Gabriella McBride. She's a dancer from Philadelphia. She was the first ever Black Girl of the Year doll. Also this year, they launched a new doll line called Contemporary Characters. One of the dolls was Tenny Grant. She's a singer from Nashville, Tennessee. Included with Tenny's collection was her bandmate Logan Everett, the first ever American Girl boy doll. He played the drums. The third and last doll part of the contemporary line was Z Yang. Z is Korean and from Seattle, Washington. Z makes stop motion videos with her American Girl dolls. Now that we've met all the dolls, let's get into the drama. The drama starts with the release of Girl of the Year 2017 Gabriella. She was the first ever Black Girl of the Year doll and only the 5th doll of color in the line. Then, in February, they launched a new doll line called the Contemporary line, with 2 new dolls, Tenny and Logan. The alleged theory is that Tenny was supposed to be the Girl of the Year for 2017, but instead, due to the backlash from a lack of diversity, they rushed to put together Gabriella. The evidence to support this theory is that 1. That Gabriella was a recycled Truly Me doll number 46. They had just retired this doll, which for collectors makes the doll less unique. And if collectors already had 46, they were less inclined to buy the doll. Whereas Tenny was marketed with the first ever boy doll, and both dolls came with unique hand shapes to hold their instruments, which made them more appealing to collectors. 2. American Girl barely did any marketing for Gabriella. 3. Gabriella was released with barely anything in her collection. At the time of her release, she only had 2 books and no mini doll, while Tenny was released with 4 books and a mini doll. 4. American Girl had 2 previous Girl of the Years that were dancers, while the Girl of the Year line had never had a singer. 5. Gabriella had a loft bed part of her collection as her big ticket item that was released later on in the year. This bed was very similar to 2012's Girl of the Year McKenna Brooke loft bed, while Tenny had a stage, which was unique. Another thing was the earrings that Gabriella were released with. There were 3 earrings. One was a bird, the second were blue flowers, and the third was a musical note. The musical note can be both for dance or singing, but the bird makes me think of a songbird. So a lot of the theories is that the earrings were meant for Tenny, but they released it with Gabriella to add more things to her collection. Another thing was that Tenny was available in Kohl's, which American Girl had just started doing the year prior and only had the Girl of the Year for 2016 Leah Clark available. And the last thing is that when American Girl introduces another Girl of the Year doll, they often have a special event on the first day the doll is available. And there's an envelope with a special item related to the doll, which Tenny had come with upon her release. Logan also had some controversy as he was the first boy doll released with no smile showing, which many thought was very disrespectful to Kaya, it was a very special thing for her and part of her culture. Z was used to fill up the contemporary lines, so it didn't seem like it was just Gabriella versus Tenny. Z also looks like Girl of the Year 2006 Jess McConnell. Z also had a very small collection, so many think she was just there to make it seem like they were coming out with a new line. The Tenny doll very much overshadowed Gabriella and her launch, which was very disappointing to collectors. Another controversy that Tenny had was many felt that she was modeled after Taylor Swift. 2017 also brought another doll line called Create Your Own. This is a customizable doll line where you can customize hair colors, hairstyles, skin tone, face mold, eye colors, outfit, accessories, piercings, hearing aids, and glasses on dolls. Another historical doll, Nenea Mitchell, was released in 2017. She represents the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941. She's from Honolulu, Hawaii, and her story shows the effects war had on her family. The last controversy in 2017 was the introduction of perma panties. These were undies that were sewn on and unremovable from the dolls. There are numerous theories as to why AG made perma panties, including parents being tired of losing the panties, cheaper to produce, modesty reasons, although many deeply hated the perma panties, which American Girl fixed and returned to removable undies and allowed people who had purchased dolls with perma panties to get the bodies switched. The new year of 2018 brought a new Girl of the Year, Luciana Vega. She was the first STEM doll created and aspired to be the first girl on Mars. Her release brought a lawsuit. Astronomer Lucianne Walkowitz filed a lawsuit as she felt the company had modeled the doll after her without her permission. Both of them had relatively the same name. She also felt the doll's last name was after the Vegas star the astronomer talked about. The doll came with a purple streak in her hair and came with holographic shoes, things Walkowitz was known for. She also felt the doll wanting to go to Mars was based on a famous TED Talk about Mars she had done, which American Girl employees were present at. The Girl of the Year for 2019 was Blair Wilson. She lives on a farm and loves to cook. The Girl of the Year for 2020 was Josh Kendrick. She was the first girl with a physical disability shown on the doll, with a hearing aid. She's a surfer and a cheerleader. The same year, they released another historical doll, Courtney Moore. She lives in Orange Valley, California, and Courtney represents 1986. Many were upset with her release as they felt 1986 was not historic. AG also released limited edition dolls this year. There were 3 dolls released for auction: the Boho Chic Collector Doll, Sweet as Rose Collector Doll, and the Fuchsia Feathers Collector Doll. These dolls were in partnership with Swarovski and sold for thousands of dollars. They then created a line of cheaper dolls, which would later include the Nutcracker Sugar Plum Fairy Doll, 2021 Winter Princess, 2022 Sapphire Splendor Doll, FAO Schwartz 2023 Toy Soldier, Princess Rapunzel, Jasmine, and Belle, 2023 Shimmering Silver Doll, and Classic Barbie Doll. 2021 brought Girl of the Year Kira Bailey. She's from Michigan but visits her family's wildlife sanctuary in Australia. She loves wildlife. Her story brought controversy when Kira's aunts were lesbian. Moms wanted to boycott the brand after hearing the news. The Girl of the Year for 2022 was Corinne Tan. She's a Chinese American from Aspen, Colorado. She was released with her little sister Gwen, who is a Welly Wisher doll. Corinne is a skier and Gwen is a figure skater. Their story deals with bullying and racism. Also released this year was historical doll Claudie Wells. She represents 1922 and the Harlem Renaissance in New York City. Claudie's story focuses on her trying to find her talent. And in 2022, they also did a truly new rebound. The dolls in this collection were marketed with very colorful outfits and hair. Many thought the outfits were cheap and very childish to older collectors. Others were disappointed and felt this rebrand overshadowed Claudie's release. Kavi Sharma was the Girl of the Year for 2023. She's Indian and from New Jersey. She likes Broadway and is a songwriter and a dancer. In 2023, they also launched historical twins Nikki and Isabel Hoffman. They both represent 1999, turn of the millennium. They're opposite twins from Seattle, Washington. They got backlash for 1999 not being seen as historical, and also received some backlash for reusing the names Isabel and Nikki, which were used for previous Girl of the Year dolls 2014 and in 2007. Girl of the Year for 2024 was Lila Monetti. She's from Minnesota. She likes horses and gymnastics. A fun thing about her story is that Girl of the Year 2012 McKenna Brooks is her gymnastics coach. She was released way before January 1st in October 2023, which left people upset as they felt Kavi wasn't given a full year. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like American Girl doll content, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below as I create new American Girl doll videos every Thursday. See you guys next week!